on whether municipalities should be required to participate? That it should be mandatory that they participate?
Not at this point in time, no.
Thank you.
Since we're at the disentanglement table with the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, and obviously childcare as welfare and nursing homes and various other services are under consideration, I'm curious from the vehemence of your statements, which are somewhat at odds with some of the things that we have heard over the years in terms of the disentanglement exercise, whether or not you believe that your association continues to support the cost-sharing arrangements as they are now, and if in fact you do not, if you think that the province should take on the full 100-cent costs of child care, how you would see municipal delivery being part of a system where there was no financial interest as there is now in terms of cost sharing.
I was afraid you would ask me that question.
Sorry.
The OMSA Child Care Committee, or OMSA in general, is researching its own position on the child care reform process. But one of the major concerns we have is that child care isn't being dealt with by disentanglement because of the child care reform paper, and the reform paper is stating that we won't deal with child care because of disentanglement. We're concerned as municipal child care administrators that we'll be caught in between with no one dealing with the issue of municipal administration in child care. The issue of cost sharing of child care is one that I know will be debated at the disentanglement table by those in authority with greater authority than myself as an individual administrator, and is yet to be resolved. I think what we ask you to do and what we hope you will do is not to eliminate your consideration of the municipal management model for child care, or to simply eliminate it because of its fragmentation and problems that it's had to date, that you consider it.
And certainly, there's no question about that. I should tell you that your characterization of where it stands is somewhat incorrect. We certainly are talking about child care as part of that disentanglement exercise, but we are taking pieces piece by piece. This is not the first one that we're dealing with. We're dealing with the welfare issue first, obviously, since it's a bigger issue, but also contains within it exactly the same elements about who pays, who delivers. And so how we do with that and how those negotiations go will have a great bearing on this. It's one of the reasons we've gone ahead with the child care reform exercise right now is, in fact, to get this kind of input to assist us at the disentanglement table. So I really appreciate the comments that you've made. The other thing I really would like you to know is that we in no way feel defensive about the role that the provincial government and the federal government have played in some of the confusions that you raise. You are quite right. Provincial governments always could have made this mandatory. And some of us have spent many years saying they ought to have. But what we are saying is, now that we are the government, we believe that we should look at all the issues, not just one or two of the issues, and that we really need to be looking at a way to make the delivery of services both consistent and equitable across the province. And although you are right that over 90% of municipalities who have social service administrators offer child care, there are many, many municipalities that don't have that kind of a structure, and therefore their citizens are somewhat disadvantaged in seeking for child care.
Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Our next presenter is Jane Jones for the Association for Early Childhood Education, London.
Freedom Party.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jane Jones, and I represent the Association for Early Childhood Education London branch. The mission statement for our association is to be the leader in promoting the professional development and recognition of early childhood educators on behalf of children in Ontario. The organisational background of the association is a professional organisation concerned with the quality of care and education for young children. Founded in 1950, it worked hard for many years to establish quality standards of child care and to foster the development of training programs for educators.
I'm sorry, can you just speak a little
I'm
louder? I
sorry.
think if you can move the microphone closer to you.
Okay.
Thank you.
It remains the only Ontario-wide organisation for early childhood professionals and others interested in the ECE field. It is a grassroots organisation governed by an elected board of directors, which includes representatives from all 25 branches. The executive committee is also made up of members from all areas of the province. The association in recent years has campaigned strongly for legislative recognition for early childhood educators. Such recognition will provide for professional development on an ongoing basis, as well as public protection through a complaints and disciplinary process. The AECEO also operates an equivalency service on a contract for the provincial government. The key response areas we wish to address are quality of childcare, ECE professional recognition, training and linkages of professionals, and childcare program locations and programming. As a growing professional association, the Association for Early Childhood Education Ontario contributes to high-quality programs for young children by supporting early childhood educators in their professional growth and development. Without strengthening and supporting these individuals who work on a daily basis with the children of Ontario, as a province, we will be unable to construct a positive and diverse framework of childcare. One of the sources of support for individuals who work with children in London and the surrounding 5 counties is the Resource Centre. This facility is a project of AECEO London branch. Educators from both licensed and informal care settings use the services, which include a library, an employment registry, and professional development, to mention just a few. A travelling consultant provides a link between the Resource Centre and licensed programs in the 5 counties. During the Resource Centre's first year of operation, from October 1990 to September 1991, 778 individuals participated in 152.5 hours of workshops and seminars to further their education. In order to strengthen and support early childhood educational professionals and the many other professionals who interact with the families and children in Ontario, we require increased social understanding of the critical importance of the early years. To develop understanding, it is extremely important that the government work with professional organisations such as AECEO to define terminology used in the reform paper. Such terms as qualified childcare staff, flexible services and support services have broad impact on the field. In partnership, all stages of the reform process will be assured of the human resources required to successfully carry out reform initiatives. Critical to such a reform process, as has been initiated by this government, are our children, their needs and their futures. The Association of Early Childhood Education Ontario therefore recommends, number 1, that the profession of early childhood education gain professional recognition in the province of Ontario. Number 2, that the childcare reform process recognises ECE professional competencies and that this procedure be adopted as a minimum standard for anyone employed in an early childhood education setting. Number 3, that and this comes under training and linkages of professionals, that the articulation and efforts to build bridges between university and college training be recognised and supported. And number 4, that the Day Nurseries Act be reviewed with related organisations in order that legislation may truly reflect required professional training. Legislation reflect and incorporate the current range of childcare programmes and necessary training essential to the provision of quality care for young children. Number 5, that the long-range planning be ensured for the development and support of childcare programmes and the training which these developments necessitate. And number 6, that provision for all indicators of quality care be reviewed and incorporated in all funded childcare programmes and reflected in all educational programmes. And number 7, that assurances are made which, through administrative training and permanent administrative support structures, promote parental, community and staff participation in the provision of quality childcare programmes. We as a provincial association wish to commend the government in initiating this reform process, which focuses on the provision of quality care for children. The Association for Early Childhood Education looks forward to having a partnership role in definitions and implementation of this essential and most important provincial enterprise. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jane.
Jane, I wonder if you could comment. Several people have asked us whether or not, in terms of the qualified aspect of work in centers, whether we are looking at a licensure kind of a system. I know that AECEO accredits people and that's a process that is a professional process. But the suggestion has been made that what we need is a licensing process similar to a teacher's certificate. And I wonder if you could comment, because I know the association over the last 18 months anyway has been a bit involved with the Department of Education around some of the curriculum reviews around the early years, and whether that has come up as an issue.
Right, and it has come up and will come up again in the future in our next conference. It's going to be a big part of our conference and our AGM discussion as to whether this should be, and I do believe it should, but I guess that's a personal view. But we certainly will discuss it at length at our next AGM, yes.
The reason I ask is the increasing concern that citizens are expressing around child safety issues, and the fact that if there is improper ethical conduct, there is a means for either suspending or withdrawing a teacher's certificate, but there is no such mechanism in terms of early childhood educators.
Quite so, and we have to look at that, and it will have to be addressed, yes, without doubt. Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess the other question then is, I mean, always when we set legislation, and we need to be very clear, the standards that are in legislation, although ours are considered actually worldwide to be fairly high in our Day Nurseries Act, they are still minimum standards.
That's quite so.
And one of our concerns around the issue of flexibility is how do we, in a minimum standard situation, because of course we're going to face that again, and we know that many, many centers far exceed minimum standards. There's no question about that. How do we set those and still maintain the kind of flexibility that certainly parents in rural areas, in northern areas, parents with particular cultural concerns have expressed to us? Is that, have you done some work in the association on that? And do you anticipate, if you haven't, doing some work around how we would conjoin that flexibility with quality?
We have looked at that, and we will continue, because it has to be addressed. One hopes always to strive for the maximum, yes. and we can't settle for the minimum. But in some areas that may have to be, and well, I don't know. We'll certainly just have to look at it some more. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, our next presenter is Joan Tabbert from the Seaford Co-op. Here's Joe.
We would like to thank the Ministry of the Community and Social Services, Ms. Marion Boyden, for providing us with the opportunity and mandate to gather and present current ideas, needs, and issues in Seaforth, located in Huron County. Our county's population is 57,000. We are one of the largest and most rural counties in Ontario, and because of this, we have unique problems. There's no city. Only 5 small towns and 9 villages. The farming community demands that there be local services. The farmer's work won't wait for a half-an-hour drive to a child care center, parent education course, or toy library. Since a large percentage of our population reside outside these small centers, community development must serve where the need is. There remains minimal commercial and industrial development and therefore slower business, lesser limited employment opportunities, lesser limited incomes, and lesser limited tax dollars to spend among the wide range of needed services. Our vastly differing geography threatens accessibility and equality of services. People in small towns prefer to get their services close to home as possible or settle for inferior care. This seems to apply to all kinds of service. They want their taxes to be used so that they can enjoy their way of life. A community base needs to supply and benefit from available service. There should not be a penalty for being rural, only that services become creative, individualized, and local. We need a few of each type of service and/or to work together in partnership with other agencies, delivering services to children to ensure quality programming for our children. Child care centers need to provide more traditional daycare and nursery school services to better meet the needs of the community and program participants. We envision using our center and an active prevention model to serve the needs of our families. Quality is limited by financial resources when we cannot attract skilled management and staff because of lower than standard wages. Pay equity must be implemented when regarding skilled and qualified child care specialists and skilled and qualified education specialists. However, we feel strongly that services can be linked while the philosophies and mandate remain different. Care is and must remain different than education. Regarding staff qualifications, management staff should have a broad base of experience in children's services, as this facilitates the agency being a community service. Management staff needs specialized training in personnel and financial management. A training continuum must develop for staff. Professional development programs would be offered and open to any professional interested in attending, an example of which is an ECE elementary or secondary school teachers attending a PA day together. There needs to be a strong link between ECE programs and school systems. The outcome of Better Beginnings, Better Futures should provide models and information to move in this direction. We feel strongly that the current Day Nurseries Act should be applied and expanded to all facilities, services, and programs for children, and children of all ages, so that quality is available to everyone and that all types of programs should be subject to these high standards. Ratios of staff to children must be examined and careful regard for staffing be used. Also, in reference to the current management of licensing, which does not appear to ensure standards, ministry staff have very large caseloads for licensing and therefore have difficulty monitoring centers and providing direction, advice, and consultation to programs. There needs to be more detailed management information systems regarding child care center operation. Example, a quarterly reporting of statistics of service and finances may assist in maintaining standards. Standards need to be linked to measures of quality that are detailed in current research, especially that which is available in the area of primary prevention. We feel that base funding is a response to the present piecemeal funding, which is currently inefficient and irregular. Consolidating funding provides a child care center with more stable and able core monies. It allows the center to develop independently and individually to serve local communities' needs. Services need to be accessible to everyone, not just those who can afford a regular tuition. If subsidy were available in a child care center, in each child care center, service users could contribute to the cost of the service according to their ability, but not suffer because no opportunity for financial support exists in the center in their town. Fees for care should still play a role in the center, but also tax dollars available for that child should be utilized as the family's needs are presented. An example of which is the family that is best served by childcare for the 0 to 6 group, as opposed to the optional education service such as JK or kindergarten, and yet their tax dollars are unavailable for childcare. Parents' participation is imperative. Research into primary prevention areas shows that effective participation in meaningful ways be parents is beneficial to children. Training opportunities need to be made available for parent board development and management in the not-for-profit sector. Roles of the parent boards, management, and teachers need to be defined and clarified. Currently, available information is often vague or outdated, unresponsive to the vast differences in local community needs. Parents in Huron County have made choices that reflect their values. Many of our families choose to have one member of the parenting team remain at home to provide quality care and must receive tax benefits similar to those available to families in which both parents have chosen to get their child care elsewhere. These parents who care for their children in the home require the same varied services as those who use institutional care. They need access to affordable nursery school, parent education, toy lending libraries, and resource centers to develop and nurture their special style of care. Some need rural and seasonal on-farm child care during peak crop planting and harvesting. Using a prevention model, parents need and request as many tools as can be implemented in local care center to protect and educate them and their children so that their values may be upheld and their standards of care be met. Also, the contact with other parents in a multifaceted service offers a base and focus to families otherwise unable to attain and broaden their horizons, possibilities, and child care information base. Parents need to keep abreast of current information, develop responsible parenting so that future generations may come to expect a wide variety of services that will ensure that their ability to bring up responsible citizens is possible for us all. Thank you.
Any questions? Yes,
Joan, you spoke of a prevention model as part of your particular child care service. Could you speak a bit more about some of the aspects of the prevention model?
We envision an active prevention model as opposed to what's currently available as a passive. We don't plan to just provide access to information. We plan to include families and parents in actually actively pursuing that role, as in presently we offer a step parenting program where we go out into the community and provide the service, and we provide the training and actively participate in it. We see that as instead of offering a pamphlet, we actually go out and we do the work with the families, and the families ask other families to participate, and it becomes a collective thing, and everybody wants to be in on the in-group. They all want to know how better to serve the needs of their children, and that's how we envision that happening. Thank you.
Joan, I wonder if I could ask the role that you see, the relative role of private home care, licensed private home care, center care, and then the kind of supports to parents who are doing their own care but need that. I mean, can you give us some advice as a province as to how we can provide that kind of range of possibilities in a sparsely settled area like Huron County? I mean, it presents very real challenges to us.
We are looking at really creative solutions for our center because it is so small. Our child care center serves about 80 families at present. So we're looking at finding perhaps a home care provider that would be willing to work under our license, perhaps, if we were given permission to do that, who would provide infant care for maybe 2 children. or toddler care for 2 or 3 children, and that person would be researched and would have a certain standard that they would have to give care, and they would be followed up regularly with home visits by our director, so that there would be a standard of care that would go across the board, but certainly creatively, so that our center, at this point, we don't see financially feasible any expansion. So we are looking for other creative solutions like that.
And of course, we are too, because one of the issues for a lot of parents is that they don't see center-based care as necessarily appropriate for their values or their needs, but they do need care, sometimes on an itinerant kind of basis, as you were talking about. One of the real problems for any center is trying to provide part-time care or seasonal care and still maintain economic viability. And so part of the flexibility we're wanting to look at is ways in which we could fund centers like yours more appropriately for that kind of care. Do you, I was curious because it wasn't quite clear, do you see the dollars being attached to the child as opposed to the center in those circumstances?
We are looking at that possibility. Several of our parents have brought up that the solution for them in the J, K, and K years is often care. They need care more than they need the J, K, and K services, because they work and the hours that they work don't allow them to get where they need to be to get that child picked up. They have inferior services, or sometimes they have latchkey kindergarten children, and that's really unfortunate, but they don't have a choice. They have to have a job and they can't afford care. So we're looking at possible on-site service where we would send a staff member to go to a public school, but we're looking for, we're looking for those options. We just don't have the funding or the staffing right now to do that.
And the last question that I was curious about, when we're talking about seasonal care, one of the things that we do see some child care centers doing for, say, March break is providing special kinds of services in church basements or some other, as an occasional kind of thing for the siblings of the children in their center. Is that what you were thinking of when you think of haying time?
We certainly see that as viable. We're looking at programs like that for the summer, because our regular nursery school enrollment is what supports us. So we'll be looking at that diminishing, and we're looking at providing a creative program for the summer where we will, hopefully support the recreational side of what would normally be taken care of by the recreational crew, and support it with quality care. As opposed to, a babysitting service. So
the rigidity of the age groupings must make that very difficult.
It's very difficult. We really have a hard time. We may have families who have, say, up to a 9 or 10-year-old that just doesn't fit into our priorities, and we really want to serve those families, but we can't do anything to help them.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will now break for no more than 8 minutes. We should really start again at 10 to 4, because if we're delayed, then the whole evening program will be delayed, and it's not fair for people who come on time. So thank you very much for following the schedule. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and I would like to invite Mr. Robert Metz, President and leader of the Freedom Party of Ontario.
Thank you once again for allowing me this opportunity to address a very important issue, and hopefully in the process to ruffle the feathers of a few politicians. I'm here today to address basically two basic assumptions underlying the government's document here called Setting the Stage, child care reform. If there are 4 good reasons to keep government away from the provision of daycare, the 4 principles purportedly guiding this consultation paper are probably among the best: quality, affordability, accessibility, and sound management. To suggest that government can possibly operate on any of these principles is nothing short of absurd. Yet that is the belief, the doctrine, that we are expected to share, and I quote from page 1 of that document. We believe that the best way to use public funds to improve the quality of child care is to direct them to publicly accountable, non-profit services. Child care, like health care and education, is simply too important to be left to the influence of market forces. Sounds a bit like a Karl Marx primer to me. I simply do not share this belief. I believe it to be false, on economic grounds, on moral grounds, on the basis of overwhelming evidence, and on plain common sense. To suggest that we should turn our daycare system into the same unsupportable monolithic monsters that our health and education systems are turning into is almost laughable. If you've been watching the trends, you should know that the current public pressure is for more market forces to come into play, including choice, competition, and accountability to consumers themselves, not to governments or to the public. You should also know that universality and the non-profit motive or approach are failing and constantly need to be propped up by continued tax increases, deficits, and service cutbacks. The first major issue we're talking about here is universality. If a precondition of this government's direction with respect to daycare in Ontario is, as outlined on page 7 of Setting the Stage, quote, to create a universally accessible system, end quote, it becomes rather obvious that any argument or suggestion I may present here that universality be abandoned will likely not even be seriously considered. It seems that the only time politicians consider abandoning universality is when their universal giveaway schemes invariably run their due course to bankruptcy. Perhaps I may be able to persuade some in this room today to stop just for a moment and consider how utterly stupid, dishonest, wasteful, and tragic our political commitment to universality is. Universality is certainly no friend of those in need. In fact, under universality, we all lose. As tax-paying citizens, we get a myriad of social programs forced upon us, supposedly to help those in need, or some other variant of an argument that is calculated to appeal to our natural desire to help others, or to insure ourselves against unexpected misfortune. You know, we call this thing the safety net. Then before you know it, it's not a safety net we're getting, but a completely unnecessary and wasteful universal government program, not just for those with a demonstrable need, but for everybody. How on earth can anyone who is even the slightest caring for those in need possibly justify their support of universality? How can we possibly expect to help those in need when we commit ourselves to squandering billions on providing free government services for all? Who's holding up the safety net if everybody's caught inside it? It's regrettable but true. Under universality, the needy get pushed out by the greedy, who unfortunately include politicians of all parties who use universality arguments to buy votes. Then there's the non-profit motive. Most people are used to hearing about the profit motive, and most people are taught from a very early age to associate the profit motive with greed, selfishness, and a host of other, quote, socially undesirable human traits. That's probably why the non-profit argument politically sells so well. But as a motive, non-profit is strictly a simplistic political motive, possibly among the most greedy of all. To the consumer, the issue of profit is irrelevant. What matters is price versus quality received. This is true regardless of the nature of the service or product, and certainly includes daycare and health care and education, contrary to the assertions made in Setting the Stage. One of the main reasons socialists in particular hate the profit motive is because profit is a check against unrestrained and unnecessary growth which can undermine the future viability of a business or service. It's easy to see how any activity operating on the profit motive would never, as suggested in Setting the Stage, pay for, quote, child care center supervisors, administrators, or specialists trained in management and administration, or staff who is overqualified and or overpaid for the value of service needed or wanted by the consumer. As a consumer, I would much rather pay $400 a month to a private daycare that could make a 20% profit than pay $500 or more a month through hidden taxes to a government monopolized daycare system that is operating on a non-profit system. Indeed, the term non-profit is most misleading as a political appeal, and I might even venture to suggest it is almost fraudulent when used in conjunction with arguments of saving costs. It is a fact of existence that the viability of any given service or social activity depends on the fact that you have to take in more money than you spend. I represent a nonprofit, officially registered political party that I can assure you would not survive unless we raised more money than we spent. In the case of nonprofit, any excess money raised over that expended is simply called a surplus instead of a profit, whereas any shortage between the amount raised and that expended is referred to as a deficit instead of a loss. The only meaningful difference between the two concepts is that profits and losses are subject to our tax system, whereas surpluses and deficits are not subject to tax. This makes the concept of nonprofit look even more ridiculous even from the government's point of view. Businesses who manage to earn a profit pay taxes instead of being reliant on them, while businesses who are operating at a loss must absorb that loss themselves rather than force a taxpayer to subsidize a losing effort. Either way, the burden is off the taxpayer and the government. Profit is just one of the many economic terms used to describe any situation where the results of one's effort produce more than is necessary for subsistence and so that you can plan for the future. In conclusion, I have three basic recommendations that if I were sitting where you're sitting today, I would follow. Forget universality. That's my first one. Concentrate efforts on helping those in need. Number two, encourage diversity through competition in a free market, not through regulation and monopoly. And of course, something I've always advocated in every social service, from education to welfare to health care, is direct assistance to those who need it. Do not, please do not make a system universal if you're as good as putting the lid on the coffin before you're off the ground. Let's see to it that the children of today will not be forced to bear the costs of these great daycare programs we're thinking up for them today when they get to be our age. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Metz. Are there any questions? Mr. Wininger?
Just one, Rob. You know I can never resist an argument with you.
No, you couldn't, David. I came here just for you.
I detected that you may have had a change in your position regarding government subsidies for such services as daycare, because in the past you've always indicated that you didn't approve of government subsidies to agencies, whether they're for-profit or not-for-profit.
Well, I don't approve of them. I just say that in the issue of choosing on how you're going to run, see, I'm coming into a forum where it's already a given that this is going on. But if I were talking one-on-one to anyone, I could give you 100 reasons why I don't think government should be getting involved in anything. Government should be the agency of last resort, not the first.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions?
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.